and welcome to the Fit for Business and Life podcast, brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network, improving the performance and transforming busy, overwhelmed, overworked professionals, business owners, and consultants, along with their teams to become fitter, happier, and more confident. The Fit for Business and Life podcast is all about sharing passion, knowledge, and expertise around business and personal performance. From our hosts, myself, Martin Sharp, a 30-year change maker in businesses large and small, and Dominic Furness, a world traveller and enthusiast. Plus, special guests sharing their know-how and experience in making changes in business and in themselves. It's featuring inspirational stories, insights, tips, and practical knowledge, bringing more healthier, happier, and higher achievements to your world. Why not follow this podcast? We are live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We very much appreciate your support. Now sit back and enjoy this episode of the Fit for Business and Life podcast, brought to you in partnership with Sharp Fit for Life and the Business Body Network.
That's again.
What was the laugh about?
Just the enthusiasm behind like how you're plugging everything.
Oh, you asked me to do that.
No, I know, but just made me think of the dinosaur thing again.
The dinosaur thing?
Yeah, just like it's so unnatural, like to me.
What, am I such a dinosaur? Is that what you're saying?
That was too funny. You're going to have to do that again, though.
I don't know. Maybe we should just leave this in. It'd be quite an interesting piece into it.
Yeah, all right. I guess if it's terrible, I'll just cut it out and put the other one in. So
yeah, well, exactly. You can just.
But I'm going to have to cut this bit. So
no, just leave this bit in. You know, everyone's been wondering what on earth is really going on, but we can get to it, guys. Okay, so welcome to this time's this episode of the Sharp Fit for Business and Life podcast. And today we're going to go through running meals. Is what we're talking about. Running meals.
Running meals.
Yeah.
What if they were driving meals?
It's a bit like crisps, isn't it? You can get Walker's crisps, but you can't get Runner's crisps.
Maybe that's the gap in the market.
It may be. It's just there's not a brand that's there, is it?
You reckon Walker's own that URL already?
I've got no idea.
So someone can't do that.
I haven't actually tried looking for that. That'd be really interesting. Can you actually buy the URL runnerscrisps.com? There's a thought experiment. But we are talking about we are literally talking about the nutrition during running, because of this last year I've had to learn a lot about running and fueling myself in a completely different way, because it's different fueling yourself for endurance than it is kind of fueling yourself for either weight loss or fat loss or a strength and conditioning kind of training. So it needs a different set of tactics, and actually taking some of those tactics from my fat loss transformations and from the strength and conditioning training and the nutritional health I've done around those elements, and trying to apply it to running wasn't necessarily the best way of doing it.
No, not from like your initial fueling strategy. No, it wasn't working too well, was it?
No, so I think when you're kind of doing the shorter runs of the 5Ks, the 10Ks, I think there's a lot you can get away with because your body inherently has a store of glycogen. So you've got an amount of muscle-borne glycogen that's kind of held in your muscles. That's why it's called muscle-borne glycogen. You've got some liver glycogen as well. It's kind of in there. That's kind of stored. And you've also got free-floating glucose kind of floating around your bloodstream as well. So you've got lots of different places where your body can take energy from. And for most people, that's usually about 2.5 hours worth of energy stores. They're actually stored inside those fuel sources. So doing things like a 5K, a 10K, even potentially a half marathon, you don't really need to concentrate too much on your fueling. And in fact, the fueling strategy I was using from strength and conditioning training type of work worked quite nicely for those, because it was a case of having the protein and the carbohydrates before doing the run. When I finished doing the run, proteins and carbohydrates afterwards to recover from the run. And again, that strategy worked really quite well.
Yeah, and especially if your body's already used to that fueling strategy anyway, like because you're not changing the scientific terms for this, but like because you're not changing like the energy store, it's used to it, isn't it? It knows what to do.
Yeah, exactly. So those were relatively easy to pick up on, and in fact, all of the work that I've done over the previous 5 years on my own personal body transformation, and some of what I've worked with many people on when they've gone through their own kind of personal transformations, that kind of worked. It just it just continued to be effective, which was great. It kind of got me over that hump of, and then all I had to worry about is the performance I was putting in when it comes down to learning about running, learning about the methods I need to use and everything else. But making that transition from doing the kind of the up to half marathon to then going beyond and breaking that kind of 2 hour barrier, that's where things really got interesting.
Yeah. What? Sorry, I just want to know before we go forward. What is that? What is the energy term when you swap from one to the other? The one where you start using the stuff in your liver or whatever. When you hit the wall.
Yeah. So then you start to utilize the energy that you've then taken on board. So if you're not fueling yourself during the early parts of a run for a longer run, then effectively your body doesn't have any energy remaining there. So what it starts to do is starts to try and catabolize your muscles. It tries to catalyze the muscle-borne protein.
So there's not two different words for these two different types of energy usage. You know, like anaerobic or aerobic respiration, two different types of words for a type of respiration. Is it not two different words for this type of energy source?
No, not really.
No.
So you're going to be taking it either from some muscle-borne glycogen or from liver-borne glycogen, or you're taking it directly from digestion, effectively, as it's then shuttling the broken down carbohydrates, or again transforming protein chain into glycogen.
Okay.
Yeah. So same kind of mechanics going in the background. That's the fuel you've got there. But it's interesting you kind of touched on the aerobic versus anaerobic, because again, looking back on my training history, a lot of the main transformational work during that first 18 months, that was a lot of anaerobic work. Again, when you're thinking about doing some of the weightlifting side of things, so the body composition kind of changes. It's more about utilizing those first creatine phosphate stores for that initial kind of amount of power, and then working within the anaerobic side, so you can feel a lot of things like built up of lactic acid, and you don't really get into that aerobic side of the work. And in fact, I think that's one of the reasons why it worked from the beginning, because I didn't like that feeling of being out of breath. Certainly being asthmatic, it kind of scared me in many cases. So being able to find a way that I could train and still be able to lose the body fat and have the transformational piece, which has really been the catalyst that's allowed me then to start using the aerobic side of my body. And this last year has really kind of taught me a lot more about what we can do from a cardiovascular perspective, how much I can actually push myself. And I know I've seen many of my clients push themselves even further than what I have in many cases. That's always kind of the big thing with the coaches, isn't it? You always want your clients to do far better than you can possibly do, because then, you know, that's when you know that they're getting the successes that they're wanting. So it's always kind of brought me a smile on my face, made me feel joyful that they're getting more success. But that's kind of that kind of difference where you're using it in anaerobic versus aerobic. So where were we? I've kind of gone a bit off piece there. So we're talking about energy and kind of fueling strategies, and the fact that doing the early days, the smaller runs, you didn't have to worry about having anything special really from a fueling strategy. You can use the same techniques as if you were doing strength and conditioning type training. But the flip side is, as soon as you kind of went over that 2.5 hour boundary, you then have to make sure you're fueling yourself. And that's where the fun really began.
Yeah, like as I said earlier in this episode, like you definitely found it hard to fuel. Like, seems like you've got it kind of under wraps. Like I know Gabe, to bring him up again, like nibbles on cheese, but that didn't work for you, did it? Particularly.
And again, Gabe does a lot more ultramarathons, so again, he's got a different strategy that works for him. So he does things like the rice puddings, cheese, he uses crisps, etc. And actually, I have used some of those strategies later on, but I think let's go back right to the kind of the beginning of learning which strategies worked and which ones didn't. So, taking that kind of initial learning about how it works, strength and conditioning, the first thing I was trying is thinking, okay, well, actually, let's do it more protein led, so protein and carbs. So when I was doing the first few runs, trying to get fueling at the early stages, I was thinking, you know, how can I have something? It's like the equivalent of chicken and rice while running. And obviously I didn't take the rice with me.
Were you looking at fast or slow release carbohydrates?
I was looking at healthy based carbs in many cases. I was thinking, how can I use things like oats? How can I use things like rice and stuff? So trying to make sure I wasn't necessarily concentrating on whether they were a really fast release or really slow release. But both oats and rice are relatively fast anyway.
Yeah. I thought oats were quite a slow release energy. If you
God,
had
no.
rolled oats,
No, half an hour.
seems slower than like a Mars bar.
That's pure sugar, isn't it?
That's true.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm wrong.
But yeah, so anyway, that was the kind of strategy originally, but I was finding that was giving me a bit of stomach indigestion, which didn't kind of work very well. I was finding I was feeling very sluggish as I was running afterwards. It was like, just literally felt like having a brick in your stomach as you're running.
Yeah, just carb crashing, I suppose.
No, I don't think that's a carb crash.
They didn't go shaky or quaky or anything.
No,
It's
no.
more like actually just felt heavy.
No, it just felt really heavy and sluggish. And anyway, I obviously thinking, okay, well, that doesn't work. Let's think of alternatives. So we tried making some flapjacks. I don't know if you remember that stage. So we're making.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize it was for that though, but they were pretty phenomenal.
You enjoyed those flapjacks?
Oh yeah, for different reasons for sure, but yeah, they was awesome.
Yeah, so it's like flapjacks with dates and raisins and whey protein in, etc. They tasted phenomenal. By the way, that's a fabulous recipe. Definitely one I'm going to have to repeat, but probably not for the same reason.
They definitely had me feeling zingy.
Yeah, yeah,
that's for sure.
Well, I think that had everything in your slow release, fast release. It had the mixture between glucose and sucrose and fructose in there. So you had all sorts of different types of sugars kind of releasing at different stages. So it kind of, from my perspective, it kind of hit all the spots that you needed to. But again, it was quite hard to eat it while you're running, and again, it felt quite very, very heavy on the stomach. So
I'm probably quite sickly. I imagine having like that continuously. Like one as a treat is amazing, but like having them as like a meal for the day is probably like a bit sickly.
Yeah,
I would have thought.
Well, it's I think there's some things you have to kind of get used to, but I definitely couldn't get used to it from a running perspective. But then even trying, for example, just fueling on just pure dates, that didn't quite work either as well. Because again, you can be really sticky and with all sorts of stuff all over the place, and where do you put the pips and things, and then I was trying those bars. I don't know, because those were the Trek bars or something you'd recommended to me.
Oh yeah, I don't really eat too much of that stuff anymore, to be fair, but at the time it did seem like a good solution.
Yeah, and
but that's just the same as having a flapjack though.
Yeah,
just probably worse because there's more chemicals in it.
But it was very dense. I think that was the other thing of it. So the other thing then slightly brings into
OMG, do you know what? We should bring back the dense turkey burgers. Maybe that'll do it.
Oh, those are a classic. But yeah, I mean, this is just so dense. So the problem was, then you kind of take a bite, and then you've got this thing where you're then trying to bite and chew and breathe and run and not throw up or anything at the same time.
I mean, I'll throw a suggestion out here. Have you tried like a dried date?
Yeah, I tried the dried.
No, sorry, not dates. Just said that figs. Dried figs, because you can get dried figs.
No, I didn't try the dry figs.
They could be good because you won't get like sticky hands and they're like pretty high in energy.
Yeah. So anyway, it was about this time. A friend of ours, Mike, who we do the park runs with, he kind of recommended speaking to Claire Fudge, and Claire's been an amazing person. She's
she's been awesome.
Dietitian by trade, and she does a lot of work with performance athletes, with business owners, etc. And is actually a Ironman contestant and ultramarathon runner on right. And she's run at kind of like world stages. So an absolutely amazing lady who kind of they gave me some great advice, and I had her in stitches with some of the eating antics that we went through. However, she just like looked at me as if to say, "No, Martin, you don't do that." And in fact, I think there was lots of shaking your heads on those moments. But kind of then brought it back to some basics, and it's like, okay, well, things we need to do is improve how you're digesting some of these things. And for her, one of the kind of key strategies from these type of races is to use gels. So we went to the process of trying different types of gels, different types of consistencies, different types of values of them as well. So we started off with just the 40 grams of carbs, just taking 2 gels an hour. And then we found actually that didn't quite work. It still had some slumps, so we changed that to do it once every half an hour. That was better. We had less slumps, but we're still seeing there wasn't enough energy there. And especially, for example, once we got over the 27 kilometers, we kind of hit that kind of mark, and then there's kind of big nosedive in the energy. And you saw this not only in how I felt at the performance there, and feelings are such an important thing to take take note of and take care of. But also then we start looking at some of the more objective figures. So things like, your heart rate, your cadence on your running, etc., the speed and the distance that you're kind of covering and things, how you're doing from breathing rates. All those kind of things were indicating that this kind of 27 kilometer mark had taken this big kind of hit. So we then started to change things, which was to add in the 40 grams of carbs, gels per every half an hour. But again, that didn't quite cut it. We still had this little slump. So literally towards the end of each of the half hours after the 27 kilometer mark. So we kind of got over the first hurdle, which is this big slump, but then we're still having these little micro slumps along the way. And that's when Gabe came back and said, you want to have crisps with it? So when you're having the gels, have some crisps in my case. And then that kind of, because they were slower for digestion than the gels are, it meant it kept us over those little kind of slumps that were happening in between. So it was kind of nicely evening out that kind of performance. So constantly got that fueling in place, ready for when my body's run out of the stored energy that it can then maintain. That strategy's worked really well.
Right. And how do you find, like, I'm just thinking if like the flavor, as you touched on the mind a bit there, like if the flavor and stuff, like if the gels are nice and the crisps are tasty, if that like a little bit of dopamine helps pull you over the edge of some of these troughs as well.
Yeah, I think there's it when you just have the gels. I find that I can't stand the taste of them, to be honest.
Well, yeah, well, I'm wondering with the crisps, right? Because you could have plain crisps, but do you like sass it up with like some prawn cocktail or something to get you like, ooh, I'm excited for the next bag?
I wouldn't say I'm excited for the next bag, but being able to like chew your food that feels
Yeah,
better
it's
than
got
just
better
having
than
to
the gel,
swallow.
eh?
Yeah, definitely better than the gel in that respect.
Yeah.
But I usually take a packet of plain crisps and salt and vinegar. The salt and vinegar is in homage to Gabe because when he first came to the UK, he asked for a packet of crisps. The guys gave him some salt and vinegar ones, and he was like, "What is this? This is like the most worst thing on the entire planet." And so yeah, that's a bit of a homage to Gabe to say I'll eat the salt and vinegar crisps on his behalf.
Well, they're the best. But yeah, no. Do you find that is a thing though, like having some food to almost like look forward to? Because obviously, the time you're on the gels and you don't like them, you'll never be like, oh yes, like the next gel. But I would personally be quite excited for the salt and vinegar crisps. Or is it just, are you in a different state of mind where that just doesn't matter?
I'd say I'm in a different state of mind these days. I mean, one of the things we did when I did the first body transformation is to try and change the emotional attachment to food. So rather than saying it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc., this becomes meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4. So it's no longer got that same connotation or attachment when I'm thinking about it. And then the food itself, it's fuel first and foremost. So we've got to make sure that kind of is catered for, and then afterwards it's everything else. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy food. I really enjoy food. I like the taste of it. I like preparing it. I like making lovely meals for people. I like the experience of dining with people. But I can now separate out what I'm doing for my performance side from what I'm doing for actually the enjoyment side. So if I'm going to enjoy having a nice meal, then I will make a nice meal and we'll have the family around, we'll have friends around, etc. And we'll just really enjoy it, or we'll go out for a real nice meal. And that will be the enjoyment of it. If I'm running, I'm not going to be, looking for a really nice meal. So it is a case of just being fuel at that point in time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering, like, from your personal perspective, like, if
yeah.
But yeah, I can see if you change that mind. I want to say early on, but it's obviously not early on if you look at your whole life. But if you already made that commitment to change your mindset around it, so it's like to take away the emotional attachment, meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, I can see how it'd be very different because I haven't gone through that process. So I think I would still be running thinking, OMG, there was some salt and vinegar crisps in 10 minutes.
No, and the other thing as well is you can lose a sense of time when you're running, especially running some long distances. I don't know if any other runners are on here have a similar kind of experience. But I know I have spoken to some runners and they do have the same experience. And you'll run and then next minute you look down, you've done 3 kilometers. And it's like, where did those 3 kilometers go? Because you kind of just get into this kind of mindset. So I do have to make sure I set a alarm. So every 30 minutes, I'll set another alarm so that we've got that constant supply of energy at the point where I actually need it.
So you've got an alarm for when to fuel.
Exactly, yeah.
Right there, that's quite quite crazy that you get like that absorbed into it. I understand what you mean though, because when I'm skating or climbing or something, it can either be 10 minutes, but it feels like an hour and a half, or it can have been an hour and a half and felt like 10 minutes. And I guess the same when you sleep and everything. So I can understand the need for that alarm if the fueling is that important. As you say, like on the shorter runs, on like half marathons and stuff, you just don't need it because your body can just push through, as you were saying. But it seems like with this, like from what you're telling me, like I'm just relaying the insights you've given me. It is just so important that you just keep dialed in with the uptake of not necessarily calories, but the right food. That's the thing, isn't it? So it's like I understand the carbs, but what's in the gels? Is that carbs and sugar and
It's just basically carbs. So the ones I've been using are a mixture of glucose and fructose. So again, it allows them to be metabolized because you do get to a point where you saturate your body of one type, and therefore it can't actually absorb anymore. So being able to like mix these means that you've got more available to you, so you can actually take them on board and actually utilize them rather than having them shuttled off or disposed of.
And do you think if you missed a refuel, your performance would just take a big dip? And if it did take a big dip, would you be able to get back out of it with another refuel that's a bit late, or do you have to kind of wait a full cycle? So say it's every half an hour, right? So you've had one, it's been half an hour and you miss it. Is it then better to have one in 10 minutes, or is it better to wait an extra 20 and get it on the next, kind of like in the hour?
It's a really good question, is that? And actually, there's actually two parts, because we're talking about the fueling, but we actually have to talk about hydration at some point. So let's put a pin in that and come back to hydration in a minute, because that's a different thought process and strategy. So with the fueling side of it, as soon as you start, if you've missed something, you just take it as soon as you can afterwards, really. And you're just trying to find what's optimal for your body. We're working with Gabe, working with Claire, working with Mike, and we kind of work that every half an hour is probably about optimal for mine. That kind of gives us that nice way of being able to make it happen. For some people, it might be an hour. For some people, it might be every quarter of an hour. You know, different people are going to have different strategies that they'll need to find out. It's all specific to their body and the way that they perform, really. But if I miss a piece, then don't worry about it. You just make it up later. And in fact, when we did the Sea York Run York social run, marathon day social run, we didn't have the strategy right at that point. So that was in the early days of trying to work out, what my body needed. And at that stage, we were using 20 grams of carbs every half an hour, and not having the crisps and things in there. But I did take an emergency bag of jelly babies just in case. And as we're kind of running around, we kind of hit that mark at 25 kilometers when I did the damage on my right leg. And at that point, just shortly afterwards, Gabe noticed that actually I was a little bit more like grey, a bit more pale, a little bit less talkative. And for that, kind of gave him an indicator that actually I wasn't fueled in the right way. So straight away, it's a case of, okay, let's get some more fuel inside you. So eat tons of jelly babies. When we got back around for the to the refueling station, we picked up some crisps, we picked up some more drinks, etc., and we went back out. And then we just had more during that last kind of lap, which kind of matches back to what we've been doing with the 40 grams of carbs every half an hour for myself, and that works. So you don't necessarily, if you miss something, don't think the world's going to end. It's just a case you add it a bit later. But you're just trying to flatten out those kind of peaks and troughs. You're just trying to give yourself that constant amount of energy throughout that, so you can perform at a good rate.
Right, that's very interesting. Well, let's unpin and go back to hydration conversation, because I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, hydration is something completely different, because as you know, if you don't, as soon as you start to feel thirsty or dehydrated, that's it. Game is over. You will never really recover from that. Whereas with fuel, you can tend to get back over it. You can give yourself a bit more. You'll probably have a bit of a slump in your performance, but then pick it back up again afterwards. Once you start to hit that dehydration mark, it can be really difficult, if not impossible, to get yourself back up. So having a great hydration strategy, so you make sure you're constantly having that like drips of water or whatever fluid you're taking in, is really, really important.
Yeah, because it can feel like someone's pulled the plug if you're dehydrated.
Yeah,
I've noticed that when hiking, like suddenly you feel like you're walking towing a car or something. It's because you're not drank enough.
Yeah, you'll become a bit delirious or something, definitely. So it's definitely something to make sure you've got, and that's where That's different from your fueling strategy. So we talked about up to half marathons, for example, you could potentially do without having to worry about eating during the run. When it comes down to your hydration side, though, you probably find you will need to drink during that half marathon. So 5Ks, you can potentially get away with it, definitely. 10Ks, again, you're probably okay. You probably don't need to have a lot to drink during that, maybe a small amount. But when you start up to your half marathon distance, 20 odd K, then you definitely need to make sure you've got that liquid coming into your body so that you're keeping yourself hydrated before it kind of hits you and you start having those bigger problems.
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of covered a lot there with regards to fueling strategies, what kind of experience we've had over the last year, with the change between running and the endurance type sports versus the fat loss and strength and conditioning type training. So I think that's been quite good.
Yeah, because there is such a big spectrum to fueling. So obviously mine is so much different to yours. And actually, like, my biggest problem is not getting enough fuel. Like, that is the hard thing, is to be able to like eat enough and eat enough of the right thing, because it's quite easy to get satisfied off like eating like biscuits and stuff, because you can keep going back for more. But kind of like, yeah, fuel, like you're calling them like meal 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of thing, like basically just not having 10 meals a day, like including snacks as meals, to try to keep it down to like 4 or 5. It's like quite tough when I'm like strength training, like Pilates, yoga, skating, cycling, climbing, like often all on the same day. Like yesterday I got up, did the gym, like with work as well, but like did the gym, did Pilates, went on a walk, cycled to the skate park, went skating, cycled home. Like, it's a lot to try like keep fueled for. And like, I'm obviously fueling for the strength training on the one half, which is a lot of like slow progressive movement. And then skateboarding specifically is using a lot of like fast twitch muscle fibers and stuff. So it's so hard, to be honest, to like, stay fueled and primed in the right kind of way. But I guess I'm still never hitting that point of what you hit at a half marathon, of depleting it to the point that you have to like switch energy supplies, because it's been constantly drip fed throughout the day with like breakfast, and then I have like my protein after the gym, and then having lunch, and then having a coffee and a little snack at some point to keep me fueled for the activity in the afternoon. And then I get back from that Hank Marvin, and then eat, and then like wait till the morning is what I try to go for without the snacks in between. But it's a lot of food.
Yeah, well, welcome to having a really active metabolism.
Yeah, like it don't help too, like my age and my gender. Like men's metabolism's higher. Like I don't know too much about calories, but our calorie intake is about roughly like 500 more than a woman's. Even though my calorie intake is definitely way more than like 2,500, but it needs to be, because like a lot of sport, a lot of movement, like using my brain, to be honest, more than I ever have before. Like with the work projects going a bit crazy, like that does make you tired, like trying to do that. So keep the omega-3 time.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, most people don't realize, but 80% of the energy that you take in goes straight into your internal organs and your brain. So that's where.
Yeah, the brain, like, I think this is the wrong phrase. You need to correct me, but like power to weight ratio, like the size of it uses so much more energy than the rest of your body, like based on like its actual like square footage or whatever, or weight. You know what I mean? Like it does use a lot, and I do literally find like if I tried like dedicate some time to read a book or something, I am exhausted and starving. Like it's crazy. Like I think like half an hour of a book is like the equivalent of like 5 hours of movement when it comes to like hunger level.
Nice. I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe it that way, but I can see how that might work. We're gonna have to see if there's a study on this somewhere.
Wait, which bit?
With
like I
regards
got the
to
ramble there.
The half an hour reading a book, it burns as much energy as 5 hours of movement. We're gonna have to look for a study.
No, I think that's conclusively true. Maybe I'll be the guinea pig on that one, because like seriously, like I am hungry after half an hour, but I could go to the skate park for hours and not be too bad. So
God only knows what it's like after a half an hour podcast then. So speaking of which, we would like to thank everybody once again for listening to this podcast. So a big thank you for taking the time out to listen to this Fit Business and Life podcast, which has been brought to you by the Business Body Network and Sharp Fit for Business and Life. Sharp Fit for Business and Life and the Business Point Network are here to help busy professionals and their teams become more happier, healthier, and higher achieving in business and in life. If you'd like to join us as a guest or to get in touch to know more about any of the topics we've covered today, then we'd love to hear from you. Just simply email hello@sharpfitforlife.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Fit for Business and Life podcast. The Fit for Business and Life podcast is produced and presented by Wax Tie Limited. Copyright is applied.
Have a good day, everybody.